Hello, everyone. This is John with the Reluctant Tech Traveler, and today we are having a conversation with Moira Mulroney. Now, Moira is actually one of the earliest people that I met since I arrived in the US in Alexandria. She actually was in my first grade class at the school I think is formerly known as Maury. And the last time I spoke to Maura was, oh my God, was literally about 20 years ago when she was living in Chicago with another fellow Alexandria alum, Liza Johnson. And since then, we've kind of kept in touch on Facebook, but we really haven't connected in real life or even had like kind of a real catch-up chat. So I thought it was high time that I found out what Maura was doing, and she was really, really nice enough to take time out of her busy schedule to have a Zoom call with me. So with that, here's a quick conversation with Moira Mulroney. She's Senior Advisor for Strategic Initiatives at the University of Southern California, and she's also Fifth Ward Commissioner at Radnor Township, which is right outside of Philadelphia. As always, thanks for watching.
Hi. Hi, John. So good to see you after so
You
many years.
too. You look great. So
Thank
Maura,
you. You look exactly the same.
I have a lot less hair than I did before. So your husband or Chris seems like I was like, man, this guy has a full head of hair. So I'm really, really
Yeah,
jealous.
he's got good hair. I did marry a guy with really good hair.
So, but Maura, as we talked about, I this is really kind of a labor of love for me. I wanted to get basically sort of in touch with all my classmates and sort of get figure out what they've been doing. The last time we saw each other briefly in Chicago, but I guess I was just curious to know, can you give us a little bit of background on what's been going on with your life after TC? So what did you do after TC? It's like, first of all, what college did you go to and what did you study and what did you want to be?
Yeah, so we've got a long blank to fill in. Feels like high school. It's a long, long time ago. When I left high school, I did go directly to college. I went to the University of Iowa for one semester
Okay.
and transferred to Boston College. So I had a little taste of the Big Ten before I moved to a good, East Coast school. So I spent those 4 years in Boston, really liked that city. Um, did the typical, I was a little unfocused, I think, in college. So
I think
took
we
me
could be
a long-
that way.
yeah, it took me a long time to even declare a major. And I looked back, counted up my credits, and I had clearly been an English major the whole time. So I did graduate with a degree in English from Boston College. That doesn't get you it's not a trade, right? You're not walking into a planned out career. So it left me lingering a little bit more with the existential questions of what do I want to be? Where do I want to live? So I stayed on Cape Cod. That's where my family has always had a house there. I stayed there into the fall, kind of just bumming around,
Really?
working restaurant jobs, which was fun. Liza Johnson joined me there for that summer into fall, and then we went on our way to kind of the next adventure. Mine took me to Chicago. My oldest brother Sean had been living there for a bunch of years, and was at that time I had a cousin who ran a very big sports bar, so had a job waiting for me and a room to crash in at my brother's place. So it was an easy, soft landing in a brand new city. And I loved Chicago. I
So
loved
wait,
being
you were working, you were working at a bar in Chicago or what were you doing?
sure. I started as a cocktail waitress at Gamekeepers, which was a giant sports bar open till 4 in the morning. So I cut my teeth handing out shots of Jägermeister and sort of beer and shots, a lot of Big Ten sports football days and nights, and a little bit kind of out of my not really my style, but the money was good and the nightlife was fun. So I sort of landed in Chicago in this bar and restaurant life for a while, and I really enjoyed it. I ultimately became a bartender at my brother Sean's bar, a small one in old Ukrainian village called Sweet Alice. So it's a
I
beer
actually
and shot
don't,
bar.
I know that area. I don't know the bar,
Yeah.
but I've been to that area quite often.
Yeah. So it was a fun that at that time that neighborhood was really sort of up and coming and sort of being revitalized a bit. So it was kind of a cool, edgy place to throw down shots and play some pool. So it was just sort of a fun, carefree young 20s life, which I really enjoyed. But while I was doing that, I was struggling with like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And so I did some various things. I worked in a theater and a couple of different theaters. I did some marketing. I did a internship with a blues record label, and I was kind of trying to feel my way out. I was with Alligator Records for just a hot minute, but it was super fun. um
Oh wait, did you want to do the Hollywood thing? Was that sort of
it
what?
wasn't really the Hollywood thing. I was thinking more sort of like on the, I don't know, I just like the arts and theater, and so I was trying it out to sort of see where I might end up in, whether it be music industry or theater production or something like that. But I basically was the ticket taker, and at the um Alligator Records, I was just sort of pitching artists to college radio stations and stuff. It was sort of the grunt work in a small record label, but just kind of a fun exposure to that world. Then I kind of through a contact through my brother Sean. I ended up kind of falling into working for a state representative. So
This is
Tom
in
is
Illinois.
in Chicago. Yeah,
Okay.
so it's south side of Chicago, far south side of Chicago. A district that was very, very Irish American and African American community. Kind of an interesting neighborhood, just very old, traditional Chicago families. And so I worked in his constituent services. I helped out people who had problems they needed to elevate to their representative, and I kind of managed his office. So I was around the politics and the legislative um, drafting and thinking, the way you think about policy, and I got really excited about that. So I didn't love the secretarial aspect of it. I wasn't very organized, but I really loved the policy and political thinking. So I ended up deciding law school was the best route for me in order to get into kind of policy
Uh-huh.
and issues advocacy. So that's when I decided it was time to get on it and take another degree. At that time, my father, Michael Mulroney, had left Alexandria and was working for Villanova Law School. So I was very, very fortunate and very privileged to be able to go to Villanova. I got in without him know. I took the LSAT without him knowing. I did not want to get a really bad score on the LSAT and have to, tell my law professor father I wouldn't be able to make it into his school. So I did pretty well on the test. So that's when I revealed that I was interested. I applied to, a whole bunch of different law schools, but Villanova did take me. And as a faculty kid, that was a real financial break. So yeah, so great law school education. It brought me to the Philadelphia area in the mid 90s. And I stayed. I thought I was going to grab my law degree and go racing back to Chicago and knock on my old boss's door and say, now I'm qualified to be your policy director. But it didn't work out that way. Philly kind of draws you in. I was surprised at how much I liked Philadelphia.
Better than
Uh,
Chicago. Oh, you're hurting me more. I'd love.
no, I don't know that I could say better, but very different cities. But I just a little gritty,
Yeah.
little bit of, and back in that mid 90s time, Philly was a little different. And so, sort of at the end of law school, trying to figure out what to do, I was grateful for an offer to be an assistant district attorney in Philadelphia. So I had been an intern in their legislation unit when I was a law student, and that team took me on as a full-time attorney. So I stepped out of law school into the DA's office doing policy and legislative drafting for crime laws, mostly at the state level.
Wow. But
Yeah.
doing the policy, you weren't in court. Like,
So I was not. I did a small stint through the lower level court system just to kind of cut my teeth, understand the system, and I did some appellate work a little bit here and there as needed. But my primary assignment was to be a lobbyist for crime laws. Um, you know, I did a lot of work for victim services, and I ended up sort of de facto becoming the first grant writer at the DA's office. I in my team, I had sort of shown myself as being a strong writer, so I did a lot of speeches and that type of writing for the district attorney herself, which was great. As a kid, as a baby lawyer, I'm sitting face to face with the elected DA to get her thinking on policy and bills in front of the state house so that I could go back and craft her talking points and speeches and stuff. So I got really good exposure as a young attorney to see the inner workings of how, major prosecutor's office works. But I also got good at bringing in money. So I got a lot of dollars for victim services, creating an elder abuse unit, brought in the first tech unit, for like jury presentation. We had people were walking down the street to the courthouse carrying large maps, and that's how they used to show the jury all of their evidence. So I got enough money to bring in some technology at the time that we hadn't been using. So really sort of cool projects to see, and I liked that. Writing a bill, it takes you session after session to work its way through committee and voting, and it's political and it bounces back and forth. But when you write a grant and you get a check, it's an immediate impact on on something that you're building. So I really enjoyed that aspect of my job, and did a weird pivot after about 7 or 8 years at the DA's office, which was like a really great run. I really enjoyed that time, but it's kind of time to move on. There was no up. I had to go out to go up because it was a small unit and my bosses were a long time from retirement. So
Oh,
I just was kicking around what I could do next, and I ended up becoming the director of grants at the Philadelphia Zoo. So my first grant was to write a justification for bringing in money to feed how much meat it takes to feed the big cats. I went I went from like crime laws to seeking dollars to feed animals, and that was a great job as well. You really got up close and personal with animals. Um I called it Tuesdays with Tony. There was a African white rhino named Tony at the Philadelphia Zoo, and every Tuesday I would go and pet him and hang out with him because his keeper wanted to socialize him with people because he was like a big dog and really liked to be around people. So I would go every week and just kind of hang out with this
were you terrified,
giant.
or was it okay?
No, it felt, I felt very safe because I was with the keeper. They kept some barrier, there's some barriers that he wouldn't have been able to get through.
How fun is that?
But I did have hands on. I mean, I was scratching him behind his ears, and the keeper, she would pull out one of those big push brooms,
Mhm.
and he would roll over on his back so she could scratch his belly. I mean, it was insane to be that close to this giant animal who was acting just like a little puppy. So
That's really
uh,
cool. Uh,
yeah, so I had some wild experiences at the zoo, but my job was to, bring in funding and entertain donors and answer questions for people who wanted to think about philanthropy at the zoo.
that's the most important job, bringing them the money, Maura.
Yeah, yeah, you just got to keep the lights on and keep the cats fed.
Yeah. Just as a side note, you don't
Yeah.
have to convince me that you're a good writer. And I'm just gonna say, like, Mr. Welsh used to give us copies of your essays as templates in class to say, like, this is an example of good writing. And so,
Nuh-uh.
yeah,
I have never heard that before.
you and Josh Peterson.
Ah, I love it.
I mean, he
Oh, that's
picked
a
the name
badge of
out of it.
honor.
I've known you since first grade. I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, this is Maura Mulroney's handwriting, for God's sake. And he was trying to pass it off. But let's just assume this is not our student.
Right.
What the fuck?
Yeah, an anonymous. Yeah, redacted my name. And that is amazing. I have never heard that. Here I am all these
Yeah,
years
I
later. What an
mean,
honor. What an honor.
I mean, I'm just saying, Mr. Welsh kind of was a tyrant to me because I kind of BS'd him. But I mean, But I mean, I was just like, he wrote for the Washington Post, but then when he started yelling at me, like, I was like, I should have taped some of this stuff to put it to the Post, Mr. Welsh, to see you trashing students. But
No, I had a different experience. I actually really enjoyed his class, and
I liked it too. But I was, I would be sitting there with Cliff Notes, and he would be yelling at me because I was like trying to read the Cliff Notes to the books. I kind of asked for it, so, but
I was
that
about to say, looking back now as an adult, you may be able to reframe that relationship a little bit.
I actually think he's a great teacher. I mean, in
Yeah,
retrospect, I
great
really like,
teacher.
but I was terrified of him when I was in 12th grade. So yes.
That's funny. That's funny.
Um,
I wish I'd known he was using my template. I would have let you crib off of it.
oh, that's okay. I have to ask you, I was talking to Brian Porter about this, although you're not directly enrolled in trial, but this is something I always fascinates me. When you're doing some of the crime stuff, I mean, you're probably exposed to some pretty horrific stuff. Was that like, were you able to sleep at night? Like that was the same thing I asked Brian, and he said sometimes it was difficult. And I was always curious about people that dealt in that field, if it was difficult to.
Yeah, it can be rough, and it's sort of later in my career I got into working at a legal aid shop for children who are in the child welfare system. So you're talking about kids with who'd gone through abuse and neglect. So I sort of have been in that space throughout my career where you're working with people who have faced a lot of trauma. And you do carry it. You carry it with you. My time at the DA, I wasn't as focused. I wasn't in the courtroom sort of handling the matters for the witnesses and victims quite as much. But in the related fields, it is, and it's really important to take care of yourself and find a way to compartmentalize what sort of the human tragedy that you see every day, and try not to take it home. But if you don't feel it, you're not good at it. That's the other thing. You have to have the empathy, or you don't go into that field. So there is some value to understanding people's stories, knowing where they came from.
I agree. I agree, but at the same time, you need to be able to turn it off, I think, at some point to.
Absolutely, and there's the gallows humor part of it. Um, Perhaps not, the most. It's not something I think everybody's proud of, but I did notice that, especially the trial attorneys at the DA's office really have this dark sense of humor, and crack jokes in order just to get through what could be really traumatic. And if you can make a dark joke about it, you maybe can leave it behind and move on. So I think that and the camaraderie that comes from those offices, whether it's the prosecutors, the public defenders, those offices that are dealing with just volumes of people and their cases and crimes, and um you have to connect to those that are in the work with you. And I think that's how you get through it. And a lot of people thrive on that.
Yeah, I can understand, but yeah, I'm sorry that you must have had some rough times with that also. So, but I'm sorry, but
Yeah, but you always feel sort of you appreciate your safety and your privilege, and that you are not a victim of crime, and it puts it in perspective for you.
yeah. Um, just as an aside, I mean, one of the things that my mom had great experiences at the store, but she was robbed a couple of times, and those experiences never got over.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah, so I mean, it was difficult for her, and even though she loved Alexandria, but I mean, she lived with that almost until the day she passed away. Like those things really bothered her. So I was really
Yeah.
sad because of those.
Yeah. No, it is hard. And I've not had one of those sort of life altering traumatic crimes. My house has never been broken into. And those really set um your sense of safety is shattered. And
Yeah.
I can understand that you carry that with you. I'm so sorry that your mother went
No,
through that. I'm such a fan of both your parents were so meaningful to me
they
in
loved
my
you.
life.
They really loved you. I
I
mean,
know, and we've talked as through just sort of messaging through Facebook as our parents have passed away, but your folks really hold this like core memory of my childhood. is going into your family store, being greeted by both of your parents, always just over the top, loving greetings. And, as a little kid, it would just, I mean, you felt like I felt like a star walking into the shop where the owners knew my name. And, it was, like I said, just sort of core childhood memory is being with your folks in that store.
Well, thanks. My dad actually, they really loved you. I mean, and again, they knew you from literally from the first grade, and so I
Yeah.
think you and maybe one or two other people were like the few people that really had been with them since the store opened when they bought it from
Yeah.
the Froms. So yeah, but okay. So wait, so getting back to you, so you were at the
Okay.
zoo, and then what
So
happened?
I spent a few years at the zoo, and then my next step was um where did I go? Oh yeah, I had a great job. I was
Feeding the animals. Yeah. Okay. So
I love being with the animals. And then I moved to WXPN is the radio station out of the University of Pennsylvania. It's a AAA um nonprofit radio station. And it morphed from being the student station and back in the 60s to a professionally run radio station that rock singer-songwriter
mhm.
uh music. And it really is the sound of Philly. Like everybody knows WXPN. It's a great station. If you want to listen, of course they're streaming and everything. So I took on the role of they were doing a capital campaign to build up funding for new technology and programming. And so I came in to run a campaign of about, I think they were looking to raise about $6 million. But I got there in 2008, and it was right in
Oh, the,
nobody was given nobody was giving big money away because we were all in the recession. And so it was a professionally and financially, it wasn't as successful as I had hoped to be there. I mean, I think ultimately the campaign did well, but it took a lot longer than they had planned for it. So I was only there about a year and a half in kind of a consulting role. But God, it's great music. They do live music every Friday. I my first day at the job, I walked in and they said, "Oh yeah, this afternoon we're doing a special donor um small concert with Taj Mahal." So I'm there with one of the greatest bluesmen. This is my first day of the job. It's my job to go and see his show. It's like, this is going to be great. So I spent a couple years there doing really good work, but really having a ball, seeing some great music. And they put on a big festival every year. So working the festival was always fun.
mhm.
Uh, and then at the end of that gig, I ended up landing at a place where I stayed for about a decade, and that was the Support Center for Child Advocates. I was the director of development and communications, so I did all the fundraising and marketing. But it was a legal aid shop, so my background in law was really valuable
Underutilized.
there.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I did. So the model there was volunteer attorneys and staff social workers come together to make a team for a child who's been identified as in the child welfare system, either removed from the family or services in the family for abuse and neglect issues. And the cases that this agency got were sort of the more complex cases. So a lot of violence, a lot of tragedy that you
Oh.
saw in these kids. And um, sort of working on the administration side, senior leadership, fundraising. I didn't do a lot of the face to face with clients. So a few years in, I decided to take a case as a volunteer attorney. So I spent the last few years there kind of as a side, as a volunteer,
Mhm.
working with a child with complex medical needs who was coming up on aging out of the system. He was severely autistic, had Down syndrome, and was never going to be able to live on his own. He came into the system not as tragically as a lot, but his mother got very sick and he got very big. And she was not able to control him and keep him
Oh.
safe. So she herself called in for services. So it wasn't a tragic case. It was one of ensuring that he got the attention that he needed. And she did pass away, his mother, while I was representing him. So trying to explain to him that he won't see her anymore, and kind of supporting him through that. But the legal aspect of it was more about understanding the systems of how you move a child from the child supporting systems to adult services. So um, that was great. I still see him. He's a fine young man living in a wonderful
He's doing
community.
okay?
He's doing great. Yeah, he's doing really well. He's charming and funny. And he lives in a small house with one other client and round the clock care with services. But he's in a neighborhood in a really sweet place, and he's not in an institution, and that was very important to me.
Cool.
Um, but yeah, he's doing good. I'm no longer his attorney, but I am a supportive adult who I come and visit around holidays and birthdays, and
You're his
um,
friend. Yeah.
I'm his friend now. Yeah. So that was good. But that work for 10 years felt really, really important. Um, and I was sorry to leave, but I think at some point when you can do your job with your eyes closed and zero stress, and it's sort of it's sort of as my signal that I need to do something a little bit more challenging. So
Yeah.
sort of after a decade of service there, I felt like I needed something else to do, and I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go, but I thought I was maybe done with fundraising. Um and then like the weirdest thing in my career happened, and
What
I now
happened?
work at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, but I do it from the suburbs of Philadelphia. So
That's what I was going to ask you. So you don't fly out there. It's entirely remote, or do you have to go out
I'm
there?
fully remote. When I was first hired, so this one's a little, my job is now very hard to explain, but I, really enjoying it. It was intended to be a 6-month consulting gig, and I've been there for 5.5 years now. So I'm now, full-time employee, fully remote. But I was hired, it was pandemic. We got used to working this way, and I have not been asked to, move there in order
Okay.
to keep my job. So
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
the University of Southern California went through a um, several major scandals, and one was uh, oh my God, why George Tyndall was the doctor, gynecologist who led the Student Health Center at the University of Southern California, and he abused young women for 27 years,
Oh,
and he fell through the cracks. It was, I mean, I don't need to get into the details, inappropriate exams and years of, bad touching, and um, really sort of, he's an awful what he was doing, but it was, everything was siloed. So years ago, he had been brought up in front of the medical board, and he got through that inquiry. He was, looked into over by the university and managed to, nothing
slide
happened.
through. Mhm.
And it was just years of him slipping through the cracks and continuing this bad behavior. I mean, awful what he was doing. And, for the courage of a nurse who called a rape hotline. She finally said, I can't do this anymore. He's doing things he shouldn't be doing.
Mhm.
So the LA Times really broke the story. And when things like that happen at a university, the federal government comes in and investigates. And so this is the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. So they came to do an investigation. It was about 18 months of looking into how something like this could happen, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. And the end result of that investigation is what's called a resolution agreement. And that's where the university administration and board of trustees, signs an agreement with the federal government to make all of these improvements. So this was a vast document of everything that had to be done for the government to say, okay, now we trust you that you can handle this on your own. So we were in a monitoring period for 3 or 4 years while we were, rewriting policy and reorganizing offices, making very clear reporting lines. We brought in a major um, incident reporting system so that things don't fall through the cracks. Everything's in one system. You can look for trends and bad actors. And So we did, between policy and practices, we really have restructured everything around conduct reporting at the University of Southern California. And probably now, kind of one of the leading best practices, given the system that we've created. It's kind of a, um, no, nobody else is really doing it. And it was built with a company, with a really knowledgeable company in this space. We've come together and built this system that allows us to report all incidents directly into case management, make assignments, be able to track and report
Oh,
out
okay.
trends and data in a way that we weren't able to do before. So all of that has been part of what I do.
That's cool.
I came in as kind of the boots on the ground, the
Consult.
attorney, the attorneys who negotiated the agreement with the government. That's their practice. They're very good at it. Or out of Cozen O'Connor, which is a law firm here in Philadelphia, and I worked at the DA's office with their partners who lead this practice. So they needed somebody at USC. We thought it was going to be about 6 months. I thought I was going to live there about 10 days, at a time and then come home for, I was going to do this bi-coastal living. And I showed up on the camp. I got the job, super excited. Had no idea what it meant for the future. I'd never taken a 6-month gig with no idea what happens next. So it was a roll of the dice. I had just turned 50 and I thought, what the heck, right? Gotta see what else is out there. And I showed up on campus on the day that LA shut down. So it was the shelter at home day, like literally the Monday that nobody showed up to work. I was on the campus with, an HR director to help open, and the tech guy to give me my laptop. We were about the 3 people on campus that day.
Zombie. It's like a zombie epidemic movie where every.
Oh my gosh, you don't even know. I mean, I remember flying when I flew in and took a taxi to the hotel where I was staying. The taxi driver, the driver's face was like, he's like, I made this trip in 13 minutes. He said, you can't do that at 4 in the morning. It's like you can never get to, downtown LA. So it was very surreal. It was very scary. And my boss, who I, had hardly met, I'd had, 1 or 2 flights out during the interview process, but she called me about 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning and said, I think they're shutting down the airports and you need to get out of here. So I went back to Pennsylvania and I didn't show back up to LA for probably, a good year and a half. LA was they did go fully remote for they didn't have students on campus for a long time. So yeah, it was weird. It was all weird. I mean, we all have our weird pandemic story, but
Yeah.
that was a strange one. Taking a job on the first day
The
of shutdown.
pandemic.
I rented like the most beautiful loft apartment in downtown LA. I was gonna live this like glamour life of this loft living and and then I'd pop home and be a commissioner and see my husband for a little bit and then go back. And I never slept a single day in the apartment. So
I mean, but I
it was
mean,
beautiful. I saw it once, but I never slept there. I had it for a few months
but I
without.
mean, I'm assuming you didn't keep the lease for the entire year, right? You got rid of it. Like,
And we had yeah, it was just, it was a sort of a, I don't even know. I found him on a weird app. So it wasn't like a company, it was just me and a guy. So we had sort of a quick handshake for a 6-month lease.
mhm.
Um, and then when this went down, um we came to an agreement that I'd pay him for 3 months. We both sort of took a big hit on that. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was a shame. It really was, so this sort of lifestyle that I thought I was moving into turned out to be a little bit different. So I'm not the bi-coastal traveler that I had thought I would be, because the whole world figured out how to do it remotely and still have significant work and engagement. So I report directly to the Senior Vice President of HR, Ethics, and Compliance. I live a little bit more on the ethics and compliance side of things.
right.
My job is morphed into kind of a, sort of in this special advisor role. I call myself a gap filler. I kind of come in between traditional HR streams and Title IX, trained investigations and stuff. So I do things like I'm the sanctioning and appellate authority for all investigations at the university where the target of the investigation is a staff member. So if somebody has a Title IX investigation for sexual harassment and is found to have, you know, the evidence has shown that they violated our Title IX policy, it then comes over to me and I decide whether they're terminated or demoted or they need training or depending on the severity of the accusations against them. So it brings in a little bit of my legal brain where I look at the record and I make a determination based on the facts in front of me, a little bit like you know a judge in the case, the sentencing. So
That's
uh,
cool.
it reminds me of that. I don't like firing people. I don't like and that having to be the end result of things. It hurts me that somebody's livelihood is being taken away, but it's usually because the behavior is so egregious that it takes that it takes that uncomfortable, like, oh, they're losing their job away when the person's done something
Really,
really
really bad.
out. Yeah, you'd be surprised at what people think they can do at work.
I've seen quite a few strange things too,
Yeah.
Morris. So you work from home
Mostly
most of the
my day job is mostly around policy. So I engage in I kind of own all of the HR policies. I need to make sure that they're up to speed. I work with the subject matter experts to make sure that we're embedding best practices, that our policies are clear and accessible and consistent. And um I get to work with various teams and kind of project pieces, right? Sort of, I get in, I fix a policy, we run it by council, everybody says it looks great, and then I move on to the next thing. And I like that. I like that kind of project minded
project.
work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I
Yeah.
mean, I was just thinking, do you work from home most of the time then? I mean,
I do. I I've probably redone my office like two or three times. So just to shake it up a bit. It's weird. It's weird being somebody who works completely from home. Um
it took me a good 2 years to get used to it, just so you know.
yeah,
I mean,
I do miss that sort of office camaraderie. I mean, during the pandemic, I was fortunate my husband was also working from home, so I felt like I had a coworker. I could kind of hear thing like other activity
right.
that things are getting done. But yeah, I do miss kind of being in a space with, I've always been fortunate to work with really creative and smart people. Um, but we've figured, the world has figured out how to do it on Zoom. I will even occasionally have just a coffee date with somebody at work because it's nice to kind of catch up and see how folks are doing. I do, I keep a lot of one-on-ones on my calendar just to maintain connection with my teams.
Yeah. It's I don't know if you know this, but like after the pandemic, pretty much all my American clients, Villanova actually is one of my clients, by the way. I do their banner.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you know the banner system, but I actually work on their banner stuff, the student
Okay.
system. But most of the US clients are entirely remote. It's just my Japan clients and Asia clients that tend not to trust people working remotely. That's why I
Uh,
those weird stories when I'm in Japan. So
that's right. And you're there now, yeah?
I am in Tokyo right now. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
But
how do you I know you're supposed to be asking me questions,
that's
but I'm
okay.
gonna ask you a question. So when you're there, are you there for like an extended period of time and you're sort of living in Tokyo these days and then you move your work
I'm
to
living in
Japan?
Hawaii right now. So, but
Okay.
I mean, when I go to Tokyo, yeah, it's usually for like a couple of months. And
Yeah,
so
that's what I
yeah, and so I mean, inevitably I'll do something stupid and I'm the crazy gaijin, but I mean, I don't mind it because it gives me a chance to talk to people because you just mentioned it. I really miss the chit chat. And so like so when I go to Tokyo, I kind of, talk to coworkers and
yeah.
that's kind of nice. I that's honestly like the joking around and the camaraderie is something I really miss.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I do a lot of it with, with work friends, a lot more texting, right? And then you think like, oh, I can't put jokes, you can't write the joke down that you might have been comfortable saying and gotten away with or something. It just, it puts a little bit, um,
You have to restructure it so it's more innuendo, more. You can't do it.
That's right. That's right. Drop in those emojis.
Right.
Anyway, I do miss that, but as far as like productivity, I get a lot done. I get a lot done when it's just sort of me and my dogs in my office. And
But I mean, is it like for me, it's always a distraction. When I work in Hawaii, like, like the table is dirty, I want to clean the table, or suddenly, oh my, I got to do laundry. And so it's for me, there's a lot of distractions. You don't have distractions when you work at home, like of doing other stuff.
not really. I think probably, my patterns for work were set when I was under the most pressure I think I've ever worked under for a job. When I first got there,
Oh, for the okay.
um, and I will give a shout out to my amazing partner. My husband Chris he really pivoted and figured out how to support um what I was doing and the hours I was doing it. So our life has shifted to I live on LA time but I'm on the East Coast. So, my work day starts at about 11 or
11.
12, right? My first meetings will be at 11:30 or 12 o'clock. And so, I have this morning to do all the things that distract you, the laundry and the cleaning the table and stuff. I do
Uh,
have morning hours for that, but it puts me really late into the night. And he completely pivoted. We now eat at 9 o'clock, and he
I,
waits, and he's recently retired. So his day is just like whatever, whenever you want it. But up until recently, he would come home, at the regular hour, 5:30, 6 o'clock after his day job, and then he'd hang out and wait and cook dinner, and I'd be ready ready by 9. So it's a strange lifestyle, but it's allowed me to do, sort of the one other thing professionally, and you mentioned in the opening, is that I'm an elected official. I'm a local commissioner. So I ran for office in 2019. I'm in my second term,
right.
and that's the local legislative and executive function of a community. So my township's about 35,000 people, and has a couple of big institutions like Villanova. We've got couple of corporate headquarters are here because we're close to the city. So it's a vibrant community. So I do my commissioner stuff in the morning, responding to residents who want a stop sign, or figuring out kind of safety concerns in the community, or we have stormwater issues here, all those sexy
Yeah,
things like
I
how do
remember.
we how do we figure out how to slow down cars and keep the water going where it needs to go. So I get to do that in the morning. I'll have coffee with a resident or meet with a developer or something like that, and then I move into my LA.
I don't know how
uh
you have time to do laundry and clean the table. You've got to do the commissioner stuff in the morning then.
that's right, I suppose. You fit it all in. People are
Okay.
patient. It's been a really, and that's been a really nice way to kind of get to know my community better. I realized that I lived out here for I'd been in the city. I'd been in Philadelphia for most of the time that I was in the area. And then it was, I guess it's been 15 or 16 years. I moved here in Bryn Mawr.
Right.
And I kind of didn't understand the political divisions, right? What's the difference between a town and a township? Why am I in one county and my neighbor across the street is in a whole other county, and who's the mayor, right? I just had all these questions about like who runs this place. I was very confident of the systems in Philly. I knew the politics and the sort of how things were run in a major city, and I knew Chicago. Just really couldn't figure out the suburban um, splits, these lines. So I asked the right questions to the wrong person. Next thing you know, I'm running for office. So, and then I was president of the township for a couple of years. So it sort of was like, don't ask the questions if you don't know where that answer is going to take you. So, but it's been really great. Like I said, it's for me, it's about service to my community. But there's the politics of it, and I will say that living out here, I had friends because I'd gone to Villanova University, and I had some folks who also lived out here. And I, had a big life in Philadelphia, but I realized, making friends as a grown up is hard. My neighbors were nice people, but it wasn't sort of that, like, I have a great neighborhood, but I sort of didn't have new friends out here.
Mm.
Um, when our kid went to through the school system, he was a pretty shy kid, so I didn't meet a lot of the other, parents that way. And um, anyway, the only friends I've really would consider like deep friendships that I've been able to make are around the local politics. So I became a member of the local Democratic Party. My husband's an elected committee person, and we run we do the get out the vote. We have, we stand at the polls, we make sure voters know what they're doing, and hand out literature for our endorsed candidates and things like that. It's sort of that small town politicking. Um, and and that's where I found like really great friendships and people who, have sort of share my values, and we can talk politics without getting mad at each other,
Really?
and because we agree.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what I mean. It's like I found my people who, sort of share my values and my opinions about what's going on locally. Mostly we just talk local, which is a whole lot less a whole lot less divisive at the local level, of course, than at national. But it's just good to kind of find your people.
Yeah.
And so local politics did that for me. It's sort of where I, found a lot of women I really like to spend time with, and I admire what they do professionally. And it's been an interesting way to engage with my community.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head on something that both my parents and actually a lot of my Chinese friends were really shocked at when they come to the US, that it's just the idea of how insular people are. It's like I don't know if you have any friends that are from China or anything like that, but in China, it's kind of like Seinfeld. People will just come down and knock on your door. Hey, what are you doing? Let's go out. And so a lot of my Chinese friends that immigrated to the US, they're really shocked at how like you can't really knock on someone's door unannounced now. It's almost like they think it's a robbery. And so
Right.
and so they're like, and they said when you Americans, when you do go to eat, it's always okay, let's go next week at 8 p.m. to 10. It's always compartmentalized so that like they thought Seinfeld was just this fantasy show where people could just show up unannounced. Like, oh, that would be so nice, but it just doesn't happen. So, but I mean, it's not just you, but a lot of the overseas people that come here that are from like extended families, they're really shocked at how insulated, like basically America.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because having been in the city, I lived in a row house and, stoop to stoop with my neighbors, and you really sort of knew who people were. You saw the comings and goings on a narrow street.
Yeah.
So when we were looking for a house in the suburbs, I did not want, the big yard and a long driveway. And so we lucked out. We found a neighborhood. Our houses are a little bit closer together. Our street is narrow. We can see each other's faces. We sit on our porches. So I was able to find sort of a community that I felt was a little bit more forward facing, lot less isolated than, you're not going to walk up that long driveway and knock on the neighbor's door.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. I live right next to a park and the kids are always out. So I've found a place that you can have a little bit of that. But you're absolutely right. I wouldn't, even with a neighbor, I wouldn't go over and probably just straight up knock on the door and say, come
Hey,
on
what are you
over.
doing? Yeah.
Yeah, back when we were kids, I do miss that though. The
I
pre-cell
mean,
phone roaming feral kids, we were in Alexandria, just rolling up on your bike and knocking on the door and saying,
hey, what are you doing? I
"Hey,
mean,
what are you doing? Let's go find our pack and roam for a
right.
while." That
It
was
absolutely doesn't happen in Japan, but in China, and especially like in sort of the less developed areas, I guess it may just be technological development. The more developed you are, you have Facebook, you can do internet messaging instead of face to
that's
face.
right. That's right. Yeah.
So, but yeah.
World has changed.
So, Maura, so getting to the nitty gritty, so like if you could do it over again, would you do anything different? If you started back, if you just went to Iowa and then went to Boston, would you change anything in your life, or would you still do?
I did always say I regretted leaving Iowa.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I so both my folks were graduates from there, and I had a lot of family. So cousins were there while I was, which was really cool. But Iowa was my safety school. I knew I was going to have no problem being admitted. And for some reason, I had Boston College. Well, Boston College, our family has a house on Cape Cod, so I knew that it was going to be close to, I'd have access to being on the Cape a lot and stuff. So I had kind of that had been where I thought I wanted to be. And I didn't get in when I applied and I was waitlisted. So I had, on somebody's advice, I wrote a letter. Oh, sorry, dog just dropped something.
It's okay.
So I wrote to the admissions and said, would you admit me for spring semester? And they said, sure. So I knew going to Iowa that I'd already been admitted to BC, and
But did,
so I rolled with it. It was sort of put in place.
but when you wrote the letter, did you give any reasons, or did you just say, "Hey, can you admit me?" Like they just said, "Okay, we'll just admit you for the later." You didn't like give a rationale for it.
I forget what I remember this. It was my mother had a friend whose daughter worked in college admissions at a different college.
Okay.
And she said, the wait list, she's sort of they'll let her in if they have a spot, but what happens is a lot of kids on the wait list don't take the spot because they've gone
Oh,
and found themselves in a place. So I just sort of preempted that, and I just wanted the answer early. I don't know why it worked. I think because nobody else did it. And I just wrote and said, you're still my dream school and I appreciate being
all the
waitlisted.
dream school. Okay. Okay.
Maybe that was it. I forget what the letter read, but whatever I said, it worked. So I knew as I was going to Iowa that I was going to Boston in the spring. And I almost changed my mind. I had a little window of time where I could have, you know,
Did you like Iowa when you were
I
there?
really did. I did. I liked Iowa. I liked the Big Ten. I was getting to know some cousins who I'd always known as, throughout our childhood, but was sort of deepening some relationships with family. And yeah, I mean, Boston was great. It was a much different vibe, going to an East Coast private Catholic school versus a, Big Ten public school. But
Yeah.
I'm glad to have had both experiences. Um, but to your question, like, would I do anything different? I think I've always thought it would have been cool if I stayed at Iowa. But when you look at where I am today, I wouldn't be, you can't change the one thing and end up where you are today. And I really like where I am today. I like
Right.
my job, I like my home, I like my family. I feel like I've kind of hit the lottery with where I am today. So you can't change stuff. But I there are some things that I actually am really glad I did and advise others. And one is don't race into your another professional degree right out of college. I thought the benefit for having lived 5 years after college before I went to law school was really important. And it allowed me to live in a really cool city like Chicago, and I don't regret that.
You guys had a
But
really kick-ass loft too. I do remember the loft very well.
yeah, we had a fun apartment. Um, yeah. So I think I take from my experience when I'm talking to other young people about making life decisions around school and going to law school. Lawyers always get people asking for their kid to have a quick conversation about what is law school like and is it worth it.
Mhm.
And I always say, like, give it a couple of years and you're gonna really like it. If you go right out of college, it's a hard, you know, transition. But if you got a little life under you, a little bit of understanding about the importance of deadlines and managing yourself as a grown-up rather than kind of high school to college to law school. So I am glad I did that for sure.
Mhm.
So no, I don't think it can't think of any major regrets.
Okay.
Been
No,
pretty
for what it's worth, I think Mr. Welsh and maybe a couple of other people know this. My mom really was terrified of me. I applied to a bunch of easy schools like Virginia Tech and UVA when I was in DC, right out of out of high school. I didn't get in any easy schools. The only school I got into was the University of Chicago, and I don't know why. So like
Isn't okay. Well,
I was terrified when I was there. And then, of course, the first day I'm there, I ran into Jonathan Korak. Remember the high-pitched guy?
yeah, I remember Jonathan.
Oh, he's like, "Hey, John." I'm like, "Oh God, no, God, what have I done to deserve this?" But yeah, we got to be really good friends after.
I like it.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes I think, I think not to get really philosophical. I think sometimes we can sort of change the directions of our fate, but I think totally changing the destination may not be. I think probably we're all mapped out to do certain things, and so maybe you're
Interesting.
destined to be in the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, and I still think about it. I mean, I have some time left in my professional life, and as I mentioned, my husband recently retired from federal government after 30 years, and but also has, another phase. So he's kind of working out what's next. I don't think he's retired forever, but um so I've kind of, with me working remotely, I've sort of put it to him. There are several places that I would go. There are a whole lot of places I wouldn't, but if he, if he got a job that took him to, I've said it's Boston, Chicago, DC, LA, these are all places where I would live.
Could you live
So,
internationally? Like, if you got a job in Europe,
oh yeah.
would USC allow you to work overseas remotely over VPN?
Um, Probably not, right? So, I think, I don't know if any of my colleagues are international unless they're in an international program. Um, so I think, they give a lot of, we do have people working all over the country. I've got colleagues from, Hawaii, Nevada, a lot of East Coasters. So they do permit that, but I don't know. If he gets a good job overseas, I would just quit and go with him because I think that would be an adventure. That's one that that's a regret that I haven't fully embraced living abroad. I did live in Israel when I was in law school, but that was just for 5 or 6 months
Yeah,
studying law in Haifa.
that's really
With
cool. Mhm.
Yeah, it was a really great program. It was weird, sort of homegrown. A professor at Villanova um, sort of half time lived in Israel and created this program where we would come over, just kind of just Villanova law students. And he created this, sort of comparable international law program. So we met with a lot of judges and attorneys from the religious courts, and we met with the Arab courts and the Jewish courts and the Muslim courts, and it was just really, really interesting to see their legal system stood up next to ours. That's a country where like family law is managed by religious courts, and criminal and other civil laws are managed by the state courts. So if you're marriage, divorce, child custody, and
Just
you're
religious courts,
go to
really.
the religious courts. Yeah. So like, those types of differences were really very interesting, and it wasn't classroom learning. We were literally just having lunches with judges and listening to them talk, and so that was great, and I really loved living in another culture. But that's really the only time I did it, and so that's that's something maybe a sort of on the bucket list, is to spend a few years abroad. I don't know
So
if we'll do it, but
if you get a chance, if you come out to Japan, let me know. I'll definitely meet you and Chris out here. We can go.
oh my goodness, absolutely, absolutely. And how long are you still there? Do you have a timed
Um,
before? Why?
I mean, I'm gonna be back in the middle of October, back in Hawaii, and then I think I'm gonna go visit my brother a little bit in Ohio. He's still in Toledo, Ohio, and so I mean, I'm trying to keep sort of one of the things that I'll just be we were never that close, and so I'm trying to like spend some more time with him, especially since our parents passed away. So I just
Yeah, yeah, I know that. Um, my folks are gone now too, and that the house on Cape Cod had been my mother's aunt. So we're now with my great niece. We're at five generations of Mulroneys have been enjoying that house.
Nice.
So now it's left to the five of us, my four brothers and myself. And, we're sort of figuring that out together. I have three brothers in California, one in Chicago, and I'm in Pennsylvania. So, it's not the most convenient, weekend house for any of us. So we just have to figure out how it's going to work. But all five of us own it now together. We've we're all using it with our families. Hopefully we'll find ways to meet up there together as a family. So, when our folks left Alexandria, we kind of lost, we lost our hometown. We didn't have
I,
a place to go back to. And that's what Cape Cod became. At that point, it became more than just kind of a summer place. It became the place that we would all come together. So I hope to see some of that in the coming years, maybe.
yeah,
My big plan is to get all five of us, no spouses, no kids, just the five siblings, to spend at least 4 or 5 days in the house, just kind of being together and figuring out how
do
we
you get
want to.
along with do you get along with all of them, Maura? I guess is the question.
It is, we do. It is
Okay.
we are a good bunch. I don't know how that happened, but I like all of them so much.
This is
Um
this is I don't know if this is true or not. This is a story my father told me. But it's a cool story. But apparently, your actor brother Dermot showed up at the Rosemont Market one day, and my
yeah.
mom was, I mean, it's a great, but my mom's like, "Oh, I know you," and of course, your brother's like, he's getting ready to be like, "Oh shucks," and he's like, "You're Maura's brother, aren't you?"
Ah, I'm sure she said that. I love
And
it.
I think my dad said Dermot just he had no idea. He was just kind of like, "What the fuck?" And so, but
No, he wouldn't. I would say if that was how she greeted him, he would have loved that. He would have just loved hearing, "You're Moore's brother."
Yeah, but I
It's
think it shocked him because I think he was ready for the "oh shucks," nice to meet you.
right, right. That's
But
funny.
but
That is,
yeah.
yeah.
So
I will say he is. We just have a lot of fun together. But he is so proud of me as my role as an elected official. He thinks it's the neatest thing. He's like, I brag about you all the time. My sister's the mayor. I was like, well, president, but that's okay. So anyway, yes, me and my all five of us get along really well. I mean, we have our independent relationships, and then you get us together, it's just a bunch of nonsense. So
that's really
uh,
cool. I
yeah.
mean, there's a 10-year difference between me and my brother, so I'm hoping to close the gap a little bit. But yeah, I think one of the things was that we're just really, really different. But after our parents passed away, we were both kind of making a concerted effort to try to be a little.
Yeah, you have to. And you do, I think it's that's what I think we've lost in by losing my mom last year, is that she was the conduit. I knew everything going on in everybody's life because I talked to my mother, and
Right.
she would tell me everything Connor was doing and what Sean is up to and where's Kieran. And so now we just have to work a little harder at it, to keep up with it. We've got the family text chain, and we try to acknowledge birthdays and give attaboys as we can, but there you do lose that. You don't, I guess you don't recognize how much you know about your sibling through a parent when you've got a mother like mine. And
Right.
now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got to go find it myself. So we're all doing as good as we can, but we do keep in touch pretty well.
That's cool. That's really
We just
cool.
don't see each other very often, which is a shame. I'd like to
Yeah,
change.
definitely try to spend some time with them because, like, yeah, I mean, just I really regret not spending more time with my parents and especially with my brother since we moved out to Hawaii. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
and so more last question, and
yes, sir.
how do you think the world's gonna like with all the craziness in the world? What do you think? Mr. Porter actually said that this is all cyclical, but like he says the younger people think it's doomsday, but from an elder's point of view, like the 60s was just as chaotic. What's your opinion? I mean, are you hopeful or
I agree with Mr. Porter. I guess I do. I do think that the pendulum swings. I don't know. I don't want to sort of I gotta say, I mean, it's a very uncomfortable time. it's a very uncomfortable time. You don't know what to do. And our, the difference that we have from the 60s is we're not just getting, a little bit on the nightly news. We
Yeah.
are inundated. And I do some of that to myself. I read about 4 newspapers a day, at least headlines, and deep dive where I shouldn't.
Well, I think newspapers are okay. I think when you read news on social media, I think that's when it becomes dangerous. But I mean,
Yeah. Well, but the papers, I don't know. I'm not trusting any of them anymore either.
oh God.
The old standbys like the Washington Post. I struggle with,
After Bezos bought it, you mean? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, being beholden to a billionaire owner, doesn't really sort of support the freedom of the press the way that I think we believed in that institution. And I think it is being corrupted. But and I, even in my own world, my social media bubble is so blue, that it's hard for me to sort of get out of that and understand the different perspectives. So I've been working really hard at that lately, and looking at things. There's a website called All Sides that I try to tap into. It does a daily newsletter, and it just, whatever the issue du jour is, it will have a very neutral headline about the issue, and then it'll give you access to left-leaning, central, and right-leaning reporting. So, and they've identified, they tell you why they've considered certain media outlets to be left or right or whatever. So, I kind of, it gives me a broader sense of perspectives. I mean, working in higher ed right now, the Charlie Kirk murder is, it's got a lot of implications about not just, the higher ed space, but kind of how we're talking to each other and how we see things. I mean,
No.
just one person who was, very engaged in our American politics is viewed so differently depending on who you ask because of what we were fed on our social media streams. Like some people put him up here as like the civil debater, and others think he was, saying really horrible things and calling for violence, and to try to find a space where you can reconcile both, where both can be true, I think is where we need to go. We need to be able to find a place where both perspectives can be legitimate and understand why and where they're coming from. Like, so that's what I struggle with is how can a country develop people so differently? Like we have at least two and many, many more like cultures, full cultures in our one country. We're so big.
Well, I mean, being when I do visit my brother in Ohio, I mean, that's a pretty red state, and there's a lot of people that my brother lives next to that have the trucks and the Trumps and the shotguns and the I think that if you talk to the people face to face, they tend to be a little bit better than when they're on social media. I don't know what it is when you're online, but it just seems to there's some barrier that just it is released when you're online, and just whatever
Absolutely.
that you may have talking face to face is gone when you're typing.
That's right.
But I mean, I think we need more people like you more. I mean, you're talking to people face to face, and I think that probably the solution is to get people offline. I think if we can get them to talk face to face, I think a lot of this would be solved. But for some
I
reason,
think so too. I think in the for the issues that affect sort of our day to day, I think we're a lot closer than we are apart. Sort of the moral issues that drive us, or maybe where we have some significant differences,
yeah,
whether it's religion, and politics, or your experience in, broader communities than your own. I think we are far apart when we're talking about immigrants and LGBTQ community, and, folks like that, sort of those who are on the edges of our mainstream society and how we think about them. That's where I think, we get into, and that's, and for me, those are the things that matter, is how we treat other people in our world, whether it's here at home or, around the world.
I mean, I think, but I do think what you're doing is really important. And I think talking to people, as I said, I think even the people that I know have positions far from mine, like when we do
Yeah.
get face to face, it seems to be more civil than what it is online. I don't know why.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. I mean, that's the same way about back when we were kids, like write notes, right? You'd write something nasty about somebody and then you go and snot at them, right? You'd never say it to their face.
yeah.
Uh, well,
And
we've just now found ourselves in
the note writing. It's
the
like,
note right in the time of the internet where, you don't just write an anonymous note where somebody can recognize your handwriting only. You make up a fake tag that, but you can always be run down. That's the thing. It's like somebody's gonna find out who you are. You're not anonymous out there. But it makes people just and I look, I think a lot of it is we are being manipulated 100%. A lot of the divisiveness online is not even coming from real people, but we take it to heart as if it's, these bots are real opinions and we are reactive.
yeah,
So I just think that's a huge danger. Like this isn't real. It's not real. It's been manipulated and created. To
yeah.
become real, I suppose. Now we really do feel it, but we were manipulated into being this divisive, I believe.
Yeah. I blame Zuckerberg, Mark, for the whole thing.
The whole thing.
And maybe Rupert Murdoch also. So,
Yeah, there's a list. There's a short list. Put Elon Musk up on in there.
so yeah. Supposedly he's had hair transplants. Did you know that? Like he was bald when he was in PayPal, or like with the PayPal business.
I do know about that. I also just heard, I don't know if this is safe for your recorded space, but that he had a penis enlargement that kind of went awry and now has a very oddly shaped member.
Okay, I don't want confirmation of that.
I didn't look for confirmation. I did not even try to validate that. I literally just heard somebody say it. And so it's somebody else read it on the internet.
uh,
So it
uh,
must be true.
yes, it must be true. So, all right. Well, Maura,
We're
thank
going to end
you.
on that note. Oh
That's on
boy.
that note. Thank you so much for your time. And I come to Japan maybe 6 times a year. So I mean, if you and Chris ever decide to come out to Asia,
Oh,
please let me know. We
absolutely.
can definitely hang out, get some sushi. Say hi to
Yeah.
Chris for me. I'm eternally jealous of his hair. So
He's got good hair.
that
Well,
great
it's
hair.
so good to see you, John. It really is. And I know it's taken us some time to get this on the books. And I know you're up late to do it, so I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. It was really good to talk to you. But take
Yeah,
care
you
of yourself.
too.
And I should be out in DC sometime before the end of the year. So if I can come out to Philly, I'll try to
Oh,
meet
I would love that. I would love that. Or I'll pop down. Yeah, let's try to see each other in person in the real world.
in the real world. Thanks, Mara. Take care of
All
yourself.
right, John, be well.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.